we want to talk about what no one tells you about buying and selling in the winter. We already spoke about this in the Spanish podcast, and a lot of people that kind of understood a little bit of Spanish said, why don't you do it in English? And it's the perfect timing. We're starting the year. We're in the winter. So we want to talk about why it's a good opportunity to buy or sell in the winter.
But you know what, Catalina? I think it's a very good topic because many people question themselves. Well, here in Canada, first of all, the main date to buy or sell or to move, it's usually on June and July.
Exactly.
It's the summer. So it's very booming at the moment of moving. Yes.
Moving.
But we see from time to time people selling or buying their properties during winter. And some people don't understand why. So we want to know here, Catalina, what are the reasons?
There's a strong belief that people should wait until the spring to start looking to put the properties on the market. And everything is basically linked to the weather. Like we associate moving with good weather, going out for visits with good weather, but that's more something that comes out of habit. But it's not the reality of the real estate market. The real estate market in the winter offers huge opportunities, especially for buyers, and that's why we want to talk about why, and we're gonna prove to whoever is listening to us why this is a good time to sell and to buy.
Yes, because we hear that winter is usually a bad time to buy or sell real estate.
Which is not.
But it's more about perception and where does it come from? And is it actually true?
It comes from habit, because people, they associate, oh, it's so cold, we're not going to go out. Oh, we don't want to move in the winter. Oh, there's very little inventory in the winter to buy. Or it's not a good time to put my property up for sale. So there's a lot of habit and there's a lot of urban myths behind that.
Well, because I think we see more when you're looking in the catalogs and what we have on the market, we tend to see a property more during the summer when it's well put.
True.
So what are the strategies that people can do during winter if that's the case?
Look, and even more than the summer, because we do have a very slow period of the real estate market during the midsummer. It's more what we call the spring market. But like I was saying, for a buyer, even if you have less inventory, there are very good opportunities to negotiate. And for the sellers, normally the winter buyer is a very serious buyer, because nobody wants to go out on a weather like this one, like today, minus 20 something, to go look at a house if they're not serious. Normally somebody that's buying during the winter is because they got divorced, or because they got a job transfer, or because their rate is gonna expire, and vice versa. When people are selling in the winter, is most probably because they got divorced or because they're moving for job reasons. So I find that the transactions in the winter are very balanced, and I find that they're very serious.
So you're saying that in practice, the types of buyers that are usually active during winter are serious ones?
Serious.
And how does that change the market dynamic?
It makes the market more, like I was saying, more balanced. Negotiations typically in the winter are quicker if we don't have multiple offers, of course, because when we have multiple offers in the spring or in the summer, they're very quick. So there's also less visits on your property, for example, if you're selling. But like, I have a property on the market. It's been 120 days, and I got an offer last night.
No way.
I got an offer last night on that property.
Why was the wait?
Look, I don't know.
You don't know?
There's a lot of buyers that came to this property that are like, oh, we're thinking about it. And this person came to visit this property last Sunday, and he needs to close very quickly because he's getting divorced.
I see.
So he needs to buy a house. January 1st, 10:30 p.m., and I get an offer on the house. And it's happened to me many other times. And for my buyers also, there's some buyers that are like, oh, there's not enough inventory. I'm like, okay, even if there's not enough inventory, keep checking, because if somebody has, for example, a property that's selling, somebody has a property on the market, and you come in on the 1st of January, people tend to want to start the year like, okay, let's close this chapter.
Yes.
Okay, let's sell. So I find that it's a really interesting market for both buyers and sellers. I'm putting a property up for sale on Monday, and I'm putting another one next Monday.
So it's
and this is all people that, one, they're both, it's both, in both cases, it's because they have had changes on their jobs and they need to sell. So they're going to be very serious on the offers. We're not going to price it to test the market, which I hate.
That's what that was.
You
my
can't
next
test the market.
Question. That's my next question, because usually the type of sellers, they need to have a more concrete strategy when they're selling during winter.
Yes.
And what are those type of strategies that they can have?
Look, when you list your property for sale in the winter, you have to be very strategic about the price. In the spring or in the summer, although I never advise any seller to test the market with a high price.
Okay.
That is always a no for me, because when the property stays on the market, it doesn't sell, you have to reduce the price, and the first thing people think is, oh, it's been 120 days on the market. What's wrong with the property?
Exactly.
So that's not a strategy even in the spring. But sometimes when it's the spring and you have more buyers, you can price it a little bit higher because there's more people looking. In the winter, you have to be very strategic. You have to price it very, very well. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get the fair market value. It just means that you're going to negotiate less.
I see.
So you give yourself a buffer that's way smaller. So let's say if the property is worth, I don't know, $450,000, put it at maximum $459,000, $455,000, with keeping in mind that your buffer is $5,000 or $9,000. And that's instead of trying to overprice it at 20, because you're going to absolutely lose visibility in the winter. And you don't, and even if you take off the market the property and you relist it in the spring, as brokers, we are able to see that.
Of course. And I know we talked a bit about the advantages of people buying properties during the winter, but can you list them so people can have them in their mind in a more clear view? What are the real advantages of buying a property in winter compared to spring or summer?
So typically, you have more leverage in the sense that you can negotiate a little bit more. Again, worst mistake is to think that you have unlimited leverage.
Yeah.
But normally the sellers that put their properties on the market during the winter is because they really need to sell within a short timeline. That's why they don't wait. But it also gives you more flexibility in terms of conditions. When you are negotiating a property in June, typically you want to move in July 1st. So sometimes as a buyer, you're going to have to accept conditions or negotiate less the price because you have a timeline, you have a deadline to pass at the notary in order to be able to move in time for July 1st when your lease expires. When you do this transaction in the winter, you can typically negotiate, for example, that you're going to go to the notary in April or even maybe May, and it gives you more time to prepare for the transaction. I have transactions that closed during the month of November, which already, even though technically it's not the winter, but it is the winter.
Yeah.
And we're passing at the notary in February. Last year, I also had things that closed in December, and we're going to the notary in March. So also it gives time to as a buyer, gives you more time to prepare. If you have a lease, it's going to give you time to transfer your lease. So let's say you lift all conditions in December, but you're only moving in March. It's going to give you 3 months to look for somebody new to take your lease.
Yes.
But if you wait until May, and you have a lease until June, for example, and you have to go to the notary in May, what are you going to do with the remaining of the lease? Nobody's going to take the lease for 2 months. So it gives the buyer more flexibility, and the seller, you're going to get most probably less visits, but you're going to get a lot of serious buyers.
And talking about the transaction of buying a property, I know that during summer, people get to be more available. But do you have any stories of people trying to buy or having that transaction during Christmas time?
Yeah. Yes. I had once a showing on December 25th. Somebody, yes. It was somebody that did not celebrate Christmas because they were from a different religion. So for them,
I see.
it's like, And I sold that condo to those people that visit. I was representing the sellers, and they insisted on coming on December 25th. My sellers had to accommodate them, and we sold that condo to that couple. So yes, look, I've been working pretty much every day. Yeah. I got an offer last night, January 1st. So yes, sometimes we need to accommodate. Sometimes sellers and buyers don't want to accommodate visits during this time of the year. But if you're serious about a transaction, I think you should remain flexible.
And talking about transactions with banks and visits with the notary, how does that work during winter time?
So during winter time, especially during the Christmas and New Year's Eve, you do have to take into account the timelines. So when you do an offer, you're going to have to put longer delays for your conditions. So for example, typically speaking, we ask for 14 days following the acceptance of a promise to purchase to get financing. In this time of the year, you should typically ask for 21 days. I have an example. I have some buyers. We managed to get into an agreement on December 22nd. We had to ask for a longer delay for the financing, because if not, it was going to fall on January 1st. Okay. So we got longer. Same thing for the inspection. Instead of putting, for example, a condition of 7 or 8 days, you should be considering more like 15 days. And closing, if you want to close quickly, let's say within 30 days, and it's in the middle of the winter, let's say mid-December or something like that, you need to contact the notary as soon as you get an accepted offer. Not wait until the conditions are lifted, because or else you're not going to find a notary to close on time.
And I know we talked a bit about the advantages for selling, for buying, but what about the sellers? In which situations can selling in winter actually be a better strategy than waiting for the higher season?
For example, when you don't want a lot of visitors, you really want I want less visits but more serious buyers, that's a good strategy. When your landscaping is not great,
you'll leave the surprise for the buyers.
It's a good time. It's a good time to sell during the winter, because everything is covered by snow, and you're not gonna have to invest a lot of money in your grass cutting and flowers and things like that. Oh my God, I had something else in mind and I just forgot.
It's okay.
It's okay. Gonna come back.
Yeah,
it's gonna come back.
But one thing that it's interesting, and you mentioned during the Spanish episode about this topic, is the idea of decorations during winter time.
Oh, yes. During winter time, and especially during the holidays, there's a lot of people that when they see the Christmas decorations and all of that, it really gives a sense of home. So if you have your house beautifully decorated, you will be amazed by how much that can influence how people feel when they come and visit your house. So And it's a good time for a seller to demonstrate if a property performs well. So for example, and I have this house that I'm going to put on the market on Monday. I'm happy that we're putting it now because everyone that's going to visit, I'm going to show them how the money that my clients invested in structural things, it makes it worth it. It's a house with a roof that doesn't have icicles. It's a house that you go in and there's no currents of cold air coming in. It's a house that the floors, although they're not heated, they're not cold. So it's a house that performs really well. And in the summer, you can't see any of that.
That's what I wanted to know, because we get to see how a property performs during the summer, but we don't see it during winter. So usually when you buy a property, we get to have those little surprises of, for example, insulation, heating performance.
It's the opposite that you said. That because you said we don't see it. We see it in the
summer. We see
summer.
it in the summer, but we don't see it in winter. How a property performs during winter when
you're buying in the summer.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. And sometimes, for example, you go to a house and in the spring or in the summer, you can't really see if there's rooms that are difficult to heat.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, there's the seller's declaration, and the sellers are supposed to disclose if there are rooms that are difficult to heat.
And what if they don't? What happens there?
Well, there you go. Then when you move, that's when you realize. And because also the temperature is something that it's very personal. For somebody, a room might not be difficult to heat, but when you move in and you like your bedroom really hot and you realize that it doesn't get as hot as you wanted and that you have to install an additional baseboard heater, you would only really know that if you do the visits during the winter. Yes. The icicles, you can only see them in the winter.
Yes. And not just that, but we talked also about the type of neighborhood that we have. It's very different during the summer and how it performs in winter with the snow removal.
Absolutely. And so, for example, let's say you're looking to move to the Plateau or you're looking to move to Hochelaga. If you don't go during the winter, you really don't know how quickly after a snowstorm the city is passing to clean the streets. And that's something that there's no questions in the seller's declaration regarding that. Or how tight the streets are. How easy is it going to be to park or not on the street? And in the summer, everything looks beautiful.
Exactly.
Like we're so happy to go out and with the grass and the green. Sometimes people forget about, and in the winter, if the property is not good, like I'm saying, if it doesn't perform well, it's not, you're going to be able to see it as a buyer, and as a seller, you're not going to be able to sell. So that's why selling and buying in the winter it's a really good opportunity.
And also about the garbage collection. I know we talked about this in other episodes, because some people don't get to have those questions and they don't see it until they're already in the property.
Yeah. For example, recycling in certain areas during the winter, they're only going to do the recycling every two weeks.
2 weeks. Yes.
So all of that is things that you need to plan for. And we can't forget that we live half of the year in the winter. So people should be evaluating the properties they're going to buy in the winter instead of in the summer. Because the biggest reality is that you're going to be living half of the year in winter. True. Or more.
And what are the most common mistakes buyers make when they're shopping for properties during the winter months?
Sometimes they, and this is a common thing that I hear, is they think they can negotiate everything.
Oh, I see. Because is it more flexible during the summer for negotiations, or how does
It's
it work?
less flexible in the summer because everyone wants to buy. So people that are shopping around during the winter are like, oh, it's the winter, this is not going to sell. So we can argument and we can argue that they should accept our price, or they should accept my conditions, or they. So like I was saying before, it's a big misconception, and yes, as a buyer you do have leverage in the winter, but you can't expect to have unlimited leverage.
I see, but I know we talked a bit about the performance of properties during the summer or winter. But have you had any experience? I know that you get to buy and sell some of your properties. Have you had any experience when you bought a property during the summer and then you had a few surprises during the winter?
Yes, well, and it was mainly I personally bought a property, and there were some rooms that were a little bit cooler.
Okay.
And look, we had to make some adjustments. It wasn't really a big mistake, or it wasn't really something that it was extremely expensive to fix, but it was a surprise. Some clients do find that, for example, the floors were their ceramic floors, they were cooler than they were expecting, and they have to do some adjustments, but that's the reality. So yes, now what I always advise buyers to do is, when there's, for example, heating rooms that are a bit more difficult to heat, or cold floors, and that's okay. But for example, if you're buying a property that has a pool in the winter, I would definitely include a clause in the promise to purchase that there's going to be some money withhold at the notary, so that when the pool is open in the summer, if it's not functional, that there's going to be money held in trust by the notary to pay for it to be fixed or something like that, because that's something that you cannot test. Other things that you cannot test in the winter is, for example, ACs, air conditionings, or heat pumps. You can't test the cooling feature. So those are things that you need to plan to maybe leave a little bit of funds in the notary, so that when the summer comes, you can test them, and if something is not functional, that the seller pays for that.
But that's such a good tip about the pool.
Yeah, the pool is important.
People don't realize that when you're buying a property and you have those little surprises during winter, that affects your electricity bill.
Yes, if you have a heated pool or something like that, yes, and it affects your budget, because if you did not leave any clause saying that the seller is responsible or for paying something, if you accept the inspection, and it is what it is. Once you open the pool, if it's not non-functional, or if you're gonna have to do repairs, it's gonna be all on you as a buyer. So yes, there's clauses that you can include for things like that when you're buying in the winter.
And I know we talk a bit about the inventory of the market, but is it true that there's less inventory during winter?
Yes.
Or is it simply that opportunities are less visible?
There is less inventory in the winter. So yes, as a buyer, you're going to find less offer, but it's also a good opportunity because there's less buyers, which means that you're competing against less people. I just remember what I had forgotten.
It came back.
Another tip for the sellers in the winter: if you own a condo in a big complex building, do not wait until the spring and until the summer. Why? Typically in condo buildings, condos are all very similar. If you wait until the spring or the summer, when everyone lists their condos for sale, you're competing with everyone. You're competing with the price. If you list your condo during the winter, yes, you're probably going to have less buyers looking, but you're also going to have less competition. So it is and this I advise many of my condo owners, if you're planning on selling and you're in a big tower or in an area that is very densified, like for example, Griffintown, where there can be a lot of offer during the spring and the summer, put your condos up for sale in the winter.
That makes more sense.
Yes.
And talking about investors, why can winter be a strategic season to secure strong deals?
Because there's less competition, because there's a lot of people traveling, there's a lot of people thinking about the holidays. So because the offer in the market of plexes and investment properties is still low compared to the buyers, you want to be buying in the winter. And again, when there's, for example, if you're buying a revenue property and the majority of the leases are to be renewed in July 1st, it's going to give you control of the lease increases when it comes the time in March. If you wait until the spring, you're going to have to wait. You're going to just have to trust whatever the seller is going to do in terms of leases increases. There's a lot of, at the end of the year, you can make a lot of fiscal benefits if you buy before. So for investors, it's typically a very interesting period of the year to close.
Does that mean that they could have better deals during the winter?
Yeah, totally.
I see.
Totally.
So, and what are your top recommendations to anyone considering buying or selling real estate in winter?
Please stop thinking that the winter is not a good time to buy or sell. That's number one. Number two, prepare yourself, be strategic. Don't forget to look what is being offered on the market. And number three is don't be afraid to close during the winter. It doesn't mean that there's going to be better opportunities coming in the spring. And again, like I said, don't assume you have unlimited leverage. But the winter, great time to buy, great time to sell.
And what about moving? Because usually during the summer,
yes.
a headache that we have is the renting of trucks, moving trucks and companies, moving companies. How does that work during winter?
It's great. You get great deals because none of the movers are working, so you can get to choose the movers. You can get you get to choose the time, the date. You can negotiate the price. If you're gonna try to move in June or July, good luck.
Yes.
You're gonna pay top dollars for that move, and you're gonna have to move whenever the building gives you permission, because if they have 3 people moving out on the same date, well, they can only take 2 moves. So it is also a way to save. Even inspectors, notaries, many of them are less busy, and sometimes they can give you better rates than if in the busy or the high season.
Interesting, because we get to think that moving during winter is such a headache because
it's
of the
a hassle
snow.
because of the cold. But I mean, you're moving. I mean, you're not moving, but I've moved during the winter. Oh my God, many times. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Catalina, for
Thank
this
you.
lovely episode.